Before we get into today's video, I want to give a shout out to Brotherwise Games, who was goodly enough to sponsor this video. Brotherwise Games is a board game company that is responsible for some of the most popular board games of the last decade. And one of my new favorite titles from them is a little game called Night of the Ninja. Night of the Ninja is a social deduction game for anywhere from 4 up to 11 total gamers, and all of you are split up into teams trying to gather intelligence about your rival ninja house, who the sus ones are, and taking them out as fast as humanly possible. As I just stated, this game is incredibly fast-paced. It takes anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to play and is suitable for ages 12 and up. If anything I said sounds interesting to you, go check out the link in description and the pinned comment below. Go check out Brotherwise Games and pick up a copy of Night of the Ninja and see if you can become the ultimate ninja assassin.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about 10 Deaths of Wolverine number 5 by Benjamin Percy and Federico Vicentini. And in this video, we are going to be discussing the threat level that a Phalanx possessed Wolverine could pose to the future of Krakoa, and more importantly, whether or not Destiny was right about Moira getting an 11th life. We're going to talk about all that and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, hit that subscribe button. I post multiple videos throughout the week, plus live stream the Blerd Cave every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. So hit that bell button. That way you don't miss anything. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about 10 Deaths of Wolverine number 5. When last we left off with 10 Deaths of Wolverine, Omega Wolverine, the Wolverine that hailed from Moira's 9th life, which led all the way up to year 1000, the Omega Wolverine, if you will, that Wolverine was infected with the Phalanx and had traveled through time to try and take down Moira MacTaggert in a hope to prevent the hellish future that Moira MacTaggert will likely inflict upon the present. And as it turns out, Omega Wolverine, he had achieved and accomplished his goal. He mortally wounded Moira MacTaggert, and right now she's in the middle of a death spiral with life literally fading from her as all of her previous lives are flashing before her eyes. But before we talk about that particular instance, I want to talk a little bit more about what's up with Omega Wolverine. Why is a Phalanx possessed Wolverine so dangerous to Krakoa? Well, if it wasn't enough that he is possessed of the Phalanx, it's the fact that the Phalanx will always try to perpetuate itself. It's their entire goal is assimilation. Any and all organic life must fall under the rule of the Phalanx, and right now the Phalanx is in a position to become the most powerful version of the Phalanx that we've ever seen. If the Phalanx could infect Cerebro, as well as all of the mutant backups and the entire infrastructure of Krakoa, especially it itself being a living being, the Phalanx would literally have an army at their disposal, the likes of which the universe has never seen before. That in and of itself is incredibly dangerous. Not only that, but the fact that this Omega Wolverine is walking around on the island is another danger, because this is something I'm actually wondering if it'll be brought up at any point later in the future. But even when this Phalanx Wolverine is attacking the other Wolverines, Gabby, Lara, Dakin, and even actual Wolverine himself, there is the potential for him to infect the others. Him just walking around on the island is potential for him to infect the others. It's not that difficult for the Transmode virus to be transmitted. We know for a fact that during the pages of Powers of 10 number 4, Cypher grazed his hand against the flowers on the island and had infected them with Warlock, and Warlock is a part of the Phalanx. So I'm starting to wonder, especially these moments where he's slashed and cut the original recipe Wolverine, as well as seemingly injuring Dakin, Lara, and Gabby, or at least attacking them in some way, shape, form, or fashion, or them even making contact with him in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Even Sage, at a point, makes contact with Omega Wolverine, so it stands to reason that it's likely any one of them could have been infected. And a Phalanx infection, while it does tend to wear itself on its sleeve, there have also been instances where the Phalanx has hidden that it's actually infected someone before. During Matthew Rosenberg's run of the Uncanny X-Men, there were instances where mutants had been infected with the Transmode virus to turn them into sleeper agent sentinels. Now, granted, in a lot of those cases, once they had revealed their true nature, they pretty much were obvious that they were infected. But once again, the Phalanx adapts, so that's one of those things I'm very curious about, especially considering that Sage at a point does modify the Cerebro's sword to delete the Phalanx from the adamantium bones of Omega Wolverine, and then he's seemingly sucked down into the pit of Krakoa, which makes me wonder a lot of things because, well, for one, did they delete all of it? I have major questions about that because something about it just felt eerily not okay. Yes, the good guys won. Everybody got what they wanted, but something tells me this is not the last that we're going to see of the Phalanx, especially if the later parts of this book are to be believed. That said, everybody is celebrating. Everybody's having the best time ever, maybe except for Wolverine because he's being a gloomy Gus as always, musing about the future and the things to come. Even a shot that we later see, and maybe this is just Wolverine imagining things, but something tells me this is a tease of things to come, especially if we go back and consider some of the things that are going on in the Sabretooth miniseries that's going on right now, showing Sabretooth seemingly awake in the pit, which we know that he is operating on a psionic level in the pit alongside 5 other mutants, and he's preparing to bust his way out of the pit. But something tells me that Benjamin Percy is setting something up. He's basically teeing up the next big confrontation between Wolverine and Sabretooth, as well as Sabretooth and everybody else for that matter. But now getting back to what's up with Moira MacTaggert, we don't really get the answer to whether or not Moira MacTaggert gets her 11th life until the end of this book. She did, in fact, die when Wolverine stabbed her. She is dead, dunzo. However, we gotta go back to House of X number 2 when Destiny informed Moira that you are going to live 10 lives. 11 if you make the right choices. Now, back when this was stated, it almost kind of came off as, oh, well, if you make the right choices, meaning that these choices, which at the time implied to me, and maybe to a lot of other people, I don't know, but it definitely implied to me that if she made the right choices, she would get an 11th life, and maybe those right choices had to do with doing what's right by mutant kind. And that kind of made me feel like that is what influenced her making all the decisions that she's ever made, is trying to do right by mutant kind, thinking that that is going to guarantee that she gets to continue living. Well, as it turns out, when Destiny said if you make the right choices, that didn't necessarily mean the right choices for mutant kind. It meant the right choices for Moira and Moira alone. As we remember in the previous pages with 10 Deaths of Wolverine, specifically issue number 3, where she had met with Arnab Shaklandar, and she was seemingly getting some cybernetic augmentations. She had replaced her lost limb that Destiny and Mystique had cut off from her in Jonathan Hickman's Inferno with a cybernetic arm. That wasn't the only thing that she had Arnab Shaklandar do to her. Arnab Shaklandar has seemingly outfitted her with something that has turned her into the Moira MacTaggert that we saw try to kill Omega Wolverine in year 1000. As I stated in the previous video, I had a sneaking suspicion that Moira was somehow going to achieve that final form and somehow bring it to the present sooner rather than later, and it seems like that is the case. She emerges from her grave having apparently been buried. The mutants were good enough to bury the woman, even though she tried to destroy everything that they stand for. But she emerges now no longer simply Moira, but apparently she's become Omega Moira? I don't know, what would you call her at this point? But this is supposedly the final life that she'll ever have, and she has no intentions of wasting it. She is now gunning for Krakoa. She's gunning for the mutants. I mean, she was already kind of coming after them ever since the beginning of 10 Deaths of Wolverine. The moment she found out they had given her Krakoan cancer, she had decided that no, they have to die. They have betrayed me. I gave up everything for them. I have lived multiple lives for them, and now I'm going to make them pay. Moira has now cemented herself as the next big X-Men villain in recent memory. And this is made even more interesting by the fact that she is now a villain of the X-Men who knows the X-Men intimately. She knows everything about Krakoa. She helped Krakoa become what it is. And she knows all of the mutants' tricks and secrets. So of any of the current X-Men villains, I don't care whether it's Mikhail Rasputin, I don't care whether it's Xeno, Dracula, Hominus Verendi, Senator Ruben Brousseau, any of the new and current villains of the X-Men right now, none of them can hold a candle to what Moira MacTaggert could potentially do to the future of Krakoa. Now here's the real kicker. I initially thought that maybe that Moira MacTaggert, the Omega Moira MacTaggert that we saw in the previous 2 issues of 10 Deaths of Wolverine, I was thinking that she was going to appear in the present using some kind of ability to time travel. That is apparently not the case. However, she does seemingly have the ability to do so, because if this Moira MacTaggert can exist here and now in the present, despite the fact that we saw her in an alternate life, which is essentially an alternate reality timeline that is technically no longer supposed to exist, this lets us know that Moira MacTaggert has a ton of power at her disposal. And whatever the amount of power she has, she is potentially just as dangerous to the X-Men as a threat like Omega Sentinel or Nimrod. And honestly, I think the only villains that could probably dwarf Moira MacTaggert at this point in terms of threat level would be the combined strength of Omega Sentinel and Nimrod. But something tells me Moira MacTaggert is going to wind up throwing in her lot with Omega Sentinel and Nimrod very soon. We already know that she has had her eye on Orchis, and I'm even starting to wonder whether or not the trickster titan that we have been told about in the pages of Jonathan Hickman's Inferno, I'm starting to wonder now, since that trickster titan was theoretically a Phalanx, something tells me that trickster titan, I wonder if, because of the way that wibbly wobbly timey-wimey shenanigans work, part of me wonders whether or not Moira could potentially be that trickster titan or be in league with that trickster titan in some way, shape, form, or capacity. Whatever the case is, we know that she is infected with the Phalanx by the time that we get to year 1000. Not only is she infected with the Phalanx, but she doesn't talk in terms of we or us like Phalanx tend to do, and even as we saw Omega Wolverine do once he became infected. She actually speaks as an individual, so that tells me either A, she is a powerful enough individual that the Phalanx has allowed her to maintain her individuality, or she is completely thrown in her lot with the Phalanx and become one of the highest forms of Phalanx imaginable. If Moira does turn out to be the trickster titan, if she turns out to be one of the highest forms of the Phalanx in the future, it would stand to reason that she would send back Omega Sentinel, the way that we learned Omega Sentinel was returned from her timeline where mutants had won, and come back to this timeline to try and change it. But anyways, there was lots of really cool stuff going on here. Once again, we did get the tease about Sabretooth, which honestly I think is just setting us up for more Sabretooth shenanigans in future Benjamin Percy Wolverine titles. I also think that there is something more going on with Beast. Something tells me this story arc is going to be continued over in Benjamin Percy's X-Force. Basically, Beast's whole disillusionment with the Quiet Council and how they're trying to do things the quotey fingers right way and play these shadow games, whereas now he talks about how a blunt instrument, a monster, a killing machine like Wolverine is the type of weapon that Krakoa needs. Something makes me wonder if Beast is going to try to start manipulating Wolverine into handling more things that the Quiet Council doesn't want X-Force to deal with. Once again, I know a lot of people have been kind of thrown off by the fact that Beast has become such a cold, hard sumbitch in recent memory, but yeah, no, this is Beast, and honestly, I kind of think it's always been there, and we've even seen brief teases and hints at it. I think a lot of times we tend to go back, a lot of the time when we think about Beast, a lot of our fond memories of Beast have been tainted by certain things. It's kind of the same way I feel about characters like Charles Xavier. A lot of people think, oh, Charles Xavier, why is he being such an asshole? But we're thinking about Patrick Stewart. We're not thinking about the actual comics. Patrick Stewart has changed how we think about Charles Xavier, and we think, oh no, he's just a sweet guy and he's not a bad person. But deep down, no, in the comics, Charles Xavier is a son of a bitch. Beast, I think the same thing happened to us with Beast in the X-Men animated series. We're not thinking about Beast from the comics. We're thinking about Beast in the animated series, who was just a sweet, lovable blue furball that just wouldn't harm a fly, was locked up in prison. And even though the wall was busted out and he could have left, he just said, nah, I'm just gonna stay and chill, man. I'm a good guy, man. I don't want to cause waves. That's the Beast I think we keep wanting to believe believe that Beast is. Like, it's tainted our memory of what Beast actually was and could be. But anyways, that was all my musings about 10 Deaths of Wolverine, issue number 5, as well as the series as a whole. I loved it. I think this is great. I know a lot of people didn't care for the 10 Lives of Wolverine as much as probably I did. I thought it was great. But that said, I also think 10 Deaths of Wolverine is even better. Put together as one cohesive story, I think they work really, really well together. But I will not argue with anyone that 10 Deaths of Wolverine is the superior part of the story. Same as I felt for House of X and Powers of 10. I thought House of X was the better part of the entire story. Powers of 10 had great moments, but I thought House of X was the superior part of the entire arc. It's no different here. 10 Deaths is the superior arc. But anyways, let me know what you thought about 10 Deaths of Wolverine number 5 and the entire story as a whole. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.